Petra Willemse, one of the humanities teachers and one of the Maker teachers in the performance learning program. Maker is a class that runs in PLP for grade 8, 9, and 10. And it is an ADST class where we get to do applied design skills and technology and a lot more. And one of the components that I'll be talking about tonight when it comes to our Maker class is our use of the program called Destination Imagination. So as Brian was saying, we're doing a recording, but please do feel free to throw us a message in the chat or raise your hand to ask any questions at any time. All right, so despite what we said, there we go. Okay, my slides are working. Hello, that's fantastic. All right, here we go. So Destination Imagination is something we've been doing in PLP for the last 3 years, and we wanted to host a webinar tonight just to sort of explain why we do it and what value we think it adds. So on the screen here, you see the Destination Imagination logo, and that is a picture from their global tournament, which used to take place in Knoxville, Tennessee, and now takes place in, Brian, help me, what's it called?
I believe it's in Kansas City.
Kansas City. Oh, there you go. So yeah, it's a huge global tournament, and we'll come back to what the tournaments look like later on. But you can see from the picture, we're talking thousands of kids from around the world participating. And that's exactly what Destination Imagination does. So tonight, I will be taking you through, hopefully, our agenda. I'll be talking about what Destination Imagination is, who does it, why we do it, how it works, and then I'll take any questions you might have. So that's our plan for this evening. You may notice I am broadcasting live from Seacove Secondary in the annex, as we call it, for the PLP program, which is where the Maker classes happen. And you can see above me some of our trophies, some of our hardware that have come from past Destination Imagination tournaments. So it's just a little background visual for you. Okay, so that's the agenda. What actually is this thing we call Destination Imagination? So in PLP, we start the Destination Imagination process, even though the students don't necessarily know it, really from the first day of school. Because the entire thing is about project-based learning, and that really is the basis of PLP. Destination Imagination itself is an educational nonprofit. So it is a nonprofit organization. It is based out of the United States, is where it started. And its goal is to prepare learners for a future that is rapidly evolving. And you can see on the slide there, it talks about some of the things that it feels that it works on with the learners. So problem solving, creative and critical thinking, risk taking, perseverance, et cetera, et cetera. And the way it does that is it is a project-based learning experience, and it applies that creative process across 7 different challenge types. And their goal is to use this sort of edu-speak term to help participants learn 21st century skills and more is their goal. When we first heard of Destination Imagination, it wasn't at the beginning of PLP. We first heard of it, I would say 3 or 4 years ago. And as soon as we saw the description, both Brian and I were like, that is exactly what we want our students to be able to do. And so immediately we knew we wanted to work it into the Maker program, the Maker classes. And that's exactly what we proceed to do. So we've been competing in Destination Imagination for 3 or 4 years now. I can't really remember, I think 4. This will be the 4th. And we really looked at it hard because we realized it did recognize a lot of these skills. And I'll sort of go into those skills and why we think that it develops these things a little bit later on. But I want you to keep in mind that's what our ultimate goal is out of Destination Imagination. So it is about 150,000 students across the US and 30 plus students, countries that could participate in the actual challenge experience. So you can see in my little video here, that's some of the grade 9s from last year participating. And I'm hoping if I click down, it'll actually play. Nope. So maybe Brian, if you can click on the screen for that, because I can't do it, but it's a little video there of some of our kids. Ah, there we go. Presenting one of the challenge solutions. And that's pretty typical to how a challenge looks. It's the getting there that's really the hard part, the students will tell you. So the challenge experience is 6 different challenges that are all rooted in STEAM, which is the science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Those challenges are new every year. So they're in the same categories every year, but the challenge itself, the requirements of it change every year. And that's developed through educators, subject matter experts, qualified volunteers. And the whole goal of each of the challenges is that the students actually not only solve the challenge, but explore their own passions, talents, and abilities, and also learn new skills all at the same messy time in that challenge experience. So in that challenge experience, I am having a lot of trouble changing size, but there we go. The actual challenge experience is open from kindergarten to university level worldwide. So kindergarten to university level students compete in the challenge experience. And that is made up of teams. So each team is made up of up to 7 members. They choose a challenge and then they work together to develop a solution. Each team has a team manager, which in this case is mostly me, but Ms. Maxwell and Mr. Hughes sort of are back up on all those things to help keep the team on track. But the goal is that we can't, and we'll talk a little bit about this later on, you can't as parents either, help interfere or assist in the team solutions. In a lot of schools, the Destination Imagination program is run outside of the timetable as a volunteer thing. So for example, in the Lower Mainland, a lot of the schools that participate in the tournaments are private schools. So it would be a club at St. George's, for example, that gets together once a week throughout the year and then presents their challenge at the tournament itself. So it's kind of exciting that our kids have the ability to do this within their timetable and build on it. Once they've developed their challenge solutions, they showcase and celebrate their awesome solution at a local tournament. And those challenge solutions, like I said, are in a variety of categories. So there's up to 7. Our students will be working within 5 categories. And I should say they're age-leveled age-leveled as well. So even though the challenge is pretty much the same, no matter what grade level is working on it, except for the really little kids from K to, I think, 4, they have a separate challenge that they can work on. After that, there's middle years and there's secondary. There's elementary, middle years, and secondary. So our students in grade 8 are at the top end of the middle years program. Our students in grade 9 and 10, when they compete, are in the secondary category. So actually this year, even if the grade 8s and 9s are working on the same challenge, they won't actually be competing against each other, which is kind of nice. That will not be true next year when we have Maker 10. The grade 9s and 10s always compete against each other. So it is entirely possible we will have 2 Seco teams in PLP competing against each other next year. So we've narrowed it down to actually 5 categories that our students are competing in. So both PLP 8 and PLP 9 have 5 teams. Each team is about 4, 5, 6 students competing in one of these categories, and your students can help explain what the challenge looks like. But they always are under this big umbrella. So you can see underneath, there's a technical challenge, there's a scientific challenge, there's an engineering challenge, there's an improv challenge, and a fine arts challenge for each of the areas. Then the part above where you see the name of the challenge is the part that changes every year. So this year's technical challenge is called the Big Fix, and they actually have to fix a real problem and create a technical solution to solve that problem. And if you ask your student to show you the challenge documents, you will see they are 15 to 20 page long documents that explain the rules of their challenge. The things that get them scores, the things that will deduct them scores, the things they must do, the things they could do. So each team is sort of in that struggle stage right now, trying to decide what direction they're going to take their challenge. So for example, in the cards, the engineering challenge, they have to build a bridge. It has to be out of playing cards. They can only use playing cards and duct tape. They can have pieces of the bridge that they can bring to the tournament, but they have to be a certain weight and size. But there's no restrictions on how they use those cards. And then to top all that off, the engineering challenge also includes they have to move a load across the bridge at the tournament, and they have to create a story around it and a backdrop to bring it to life. So you can see these are very detailed, challenging challenges that the students have to solve. And although they'll come to the tournament, which I'll talk about in a minute, even though there may be, especially the middle years, which is the most competitive category, as I tell the grade eights, there may be 8 teams in their category. Every single team will have come to that tournament with a vastly different solution from the other team next to them. So you can be in the room and not even necessarily realize they're working with the same constraints, because it is about those creative constraints. So again, I encourage you to ask your student what team they're on and how they're solving it. But, and here's my big but about this problem, is Destination Imagination is very big on the concept of interference. Okay, so what is interference? Your student may have already asked you to sign an interference contract, and hopefully you also read it before you just signed it. The interference contract talks about the role each of the people takes in the job of creating the solution to the challenge. So in this particular slide, it tells you that only the team members can actually contribute ideas to create the team challenge and the instant challenge solution. I'll come back to the instant challenge in a minute. So help from family members, parents, friends, the team manager is considered interference. And DI is very serious about this. Now, sometimes the kids ask me, oh, but I can get around that. Yeah, of course you can, but that's not actually the spirit of Destination Imagination, which is about creative, critical thinking and problem solving. So actually the first thing they do in any tournament is all students take an actual oath saying that they have worked on the challenge solution themselves, they've worked hard, they've done the imagination, all of that. So they actually swear a little oath before they compete. And we take it pretty seriously. So on that contract that you'll be asked to sign, and I will sign as well as the team manager, it talks about that you are absolutely allowed to help your child. Of course, we're not saying don't help your child, but you can't interfere with it. And this is probably the hardest thing we have to deal with. So even in that picture there, you see Brian sort of smiling there. What he's, the man in the cow hat, you may wonder about who that is. He is what in Destination Imagination is known as an appraiser. So in Destination Imagination, you don't actually have judges who score you. The appraisers are doing the scoring. And probably each challenge has 4, 5, 6 appraisers viewing it at any time. And the appraisers, they call themselves appraisers very purposely because they want to praise the learners for their learning. So after the tournament is over, it actually takes quite a while before the tournament after the tournament ends, before the scores are released, because the appraisers actually meet with the team. And so you can see Meg is there actually meeting with the appraiser and Brian as the team manager to sort of go through her scores and then report back to her team. So they take that actually as a huge part of the process, because it does come back to that ownership of the challenge solution that the team should have. Just like in our M polls, when our students start them off, we ask them to, I am accountable for my own learning. In this case, they are accountable for the solution to their challenge, which is why they need to avoid this interference. So how, as a parent and a team manager, do you help with that? So you can teach them if they ask. So for example, and this is a classic DI example, they want to cut something out with a jigsaw. All right. So they don't know how to use a jigsaw. You cannot, as a parent, take it and just cut it out for them. Even if they had a detailed map and schematic and everything of what they wanted cut out with the jigsaw, you cannot do it for them. What you can do is show them how to use a jigsaw. So if you teach them how to use a jigsaw and then they take the piece of wood and actually cut it out themselves, that isn't interference. And I try to repeat this over and over again to the students because they get super confused and super worried. Is this interference if I do this? And you can always check with us and we can help you out. But the basic rule of thumb is if you can teach them how to do something without doing it, then it's not interference. So if they do want to learn to sew, by all means, go crazy, show them how to sew. It's not going to be me who did that. I'm the person who sewed through her thumb in grade 8 life skills. So no, I will not be teaching anyone how to sew. But sewing is an example of a skill they might decide they need for solving this challenge. And by all means, show them how to sew, but don't sew the fabric for them. It's the same with buying things. So this is an interesting little rule that students need to be aware of and parents need to be aware of. Every challenge has a budget. You can't just go out and spend hundreds of dollars for your solution. And that's very purposeful to make it fair, because Destination Imagination is for everyone. So they are about the equity side of things. So they have a budget, and students actually have to hand in their budget, everything they've used and the cost of everything they've used to make their solution. And they're very big on, and we are very big on, we think is one of the competencies they need to know for their maker class, is about, as much as possible, using materials they already have, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle, and then this is the ultimate case of that. So reusing things, asking us for things is a really great idea. For example, a group today was like, yeah, we want to use an Arduino and we only have one. And I'm like, well, you haven't asked me. And actually I have an Arduino in the cupboard. They're like, what? So, I mean, always asking around is a really good idea first. So if they do want to buy something, the classic example is they need to go to Michael's. So they need to go to Michael's and they decide they need a red poster board for their solution, and nothing will do, but they go to Michael's and get red poster board. It would be interference if you went to Michael's and bought the red poster board, because it's not that students need to go to Michael's themselves, but they need to be very specific about what they need you to buy, down to color, shape, and size. So if you went to Michael's and there's like 4 different types of red poster board, one with foam, one without foam, one that's maroon, one that's like slightly off red, as soon as you make the choice for them, that's actually interference. So either you need to take a picture and send it to them on the phone and say, like, which one do you want? And they can tell you, then it's not interference. Or they could specify in advance, or ideally they would go with you. This comes into play a lot with, like, say, paint. They send you to the store and they say, I need white paint. Even as soon as you're making the decision, do you need eggshell paint, latex paint? Is it white or is it ecru? Is it beige? What type of paint do they actually need? And it sounds a little silly, but the intent really is that the students are taking the ownership for the challenge themselves, and they've thought about that level of detail. Because the first thing the appraisers are going to ask the students is, well, why did you choose to use that paint? Tell me more about that. And when they say, I don't know, my mom bought it at Michael's, that's not the ownership level that we're looking for in doing this. So you're seeing that idea of the reusing equipment, asking for help, but not having it done for them. And it really is about encouragement. So even at the tournament, I think even when teams have not had a successful placement or disappointed or the whole thing falls apart, which definitely happens in Destination Imagination, because as I ran you through very briefly the engineering challenge, you can see a lot of ways that challenge could fall apart on the day of Destination Imagination. I think most of our students, and I'll come back to this in our why section, would say that they feel very empowered by the end of the process. Even when our appraiser friend here, Cowhead, whose real name I always forget, is giving them feedback that they don't necessarily, or scores they aren't thrilled with. They always feel like, yeah, I know how I can do that, right? Okay, so that's about interference. The last thing I'll just talk about before we sort of get into the nitty-gritties of things and tournaments, at the tournament, they do present the challenge solution, which is the big thing I just talked about, but they also present an instant challenge. So I did say challenge solution. All friends, family, parents, everyone is welcome to come watch. So the day of the tournament, those are wide open to the public. We will have well over 1,000 people coming in and out of the school that day. And we encourage you to come and watch them. The kids work for months on this, and it means a lot to them to have you there. To support them. What you cannot see is the instant challenge. So everything I just described is still only 3/4 of their final score, their final placement at the tournaments. 1/4 of their score, 25%, goes to this instant challenge. And the instant challenge, you can see a picture there of the grade 11s when they were in, I think that's last year, grade 10, so it's only a year ago. They were, that's their instant challenge solution. We do a lot of practices here during Maker as we get closer and closer to the tournament. The instant challenge, the teams go in alone. They don't even have me in the room as the team manager. They are alone. If I didn't have multiple teams, I could go in with them, but because it's multiple teams, they go in alone. And it is a challenge where they have to do quick, creative, critical thinking. So it's basically like everything they just did in months in 5 to 8 minutes. They have to show that as a team, they can operate under that level of time constraint to use the materials and the problem that is put before them and think on their feet to apply the skills and produce a solution. Those instant challenges are totally confidential. I have no idea what they are. And in fact, they have to, part of the oath the students swear is that they don't talk about the instant challenges. They don't write about them on their blog. They don't mention them to anyone outside the room all the way until summertime, because tournaments will be ongoing the whole time. And even then, there is a variety of instant challenges, so they won't all do the same one on the tournament day, but they can't like even share with their friends. Their team can debrief on it, and they can talk about like in general how they would improve or tackle it as a team if they were to do it again, but they can't share out about that. And so obviously as parents and everything else, we are not invited in the instant challenge room. The teams have to walk into that one on their own. But they get a lot of practice in class. They will not be totally surprised. And they can talk to you. Please do ask your student about some of the instant challenges they've already done. And when I say we start DI in PLP on day one, I actually misspoke, because one of the instant challenges our students do in the application process is actually a DI instant challenge. So you can ask them about that as well. We had quite a funny week this week with the grade 8s doing their first performance-based instant challenge, where they did basically pet tricks was the topic of the instant challenges. The grade 9s did it last week, and well, we've got some room to grow. Let's just put it that way. So where does these instant challenges and challenge solutions come to, where do they get presented? Most teams spend 2 to 4 months planning, developing, practicing their challenge solutions, which is exactly what we're doing right now in Maker. And they exhibit that creativity and innovation in front of the live audiences at the local tournaments. For the past 3 years, we've hosted the regional tournament for the Lower Mainland here at SECO. The big benefit of that is that our students don't have to move giant unwieldy things they might build anywhere else for the regional tournament. They will have to keep and move their solutions for the provincial tournament. All our teams will be going to the provincial tournament, so they can definitely compete in both of them. There'll be enough space for all our teams to compete in both. So the regional tournament is February 29th at SECO. The provincial tournament this year is, surprise to us, at Carson Graham. So actually they don't have to move their props too far. We've driven all the way out to deep dark Surrey for provincial tournaments before. So that's fantastic. So February 29th and April 4th, your students need to be prepared to be available from 8 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. It is a full day of work. We do not know the schedule until much closer to the date. When we do know the schedule, we will let families know so they can plan to come and watch, but we are going to request that the students are here all day, especially because we're hosting, although the benefit is they don't have to take anything out, the downside is we have to have the school all turned upside down. So like I said, we have well over 1,000 people in and out of the school that day. So it is crazy. We will be asking our older PLP students, the grade 11 and 12s will be here volunteering, so they also are booking off that entire day. They will be helping to lead the rooms, to clean up, to run around after everyone, all of the things that have to get done to basically use every room in this school as a performance space. I'm just thinking of anything else I need to say about tournaments at a glance. The only other thing I would say, as we get closer to the tournaments, the pressure on the students does increase. They feel the weight of having to present their solutions. So I've told the grade 8s and 9s to also book into their calendar that this Friday, which is professional day, but the school is open, that they may want to come with their team and spend an hour or two just talking it out, thinking about their solutions and doing some work on their solutions. Next week on Thursday and Friday, we have parent-teacher interview days. They have early dismissal. So again, I've encouraged both the PLP 8s and 9s to consider coming to school, working with their teams, and meeting up. Of course, they can do that electronically as well, but there's really nothing like face-to-face conversation to build those solutions. And very soon, you'll see the students can talk to you about the different stages they go through. It's a lot like if you were following along for their Blue Sky for the winter exhibition. It's very similar, the creative process. We have gone through the stage 1 recognized where they've thought about the elements they're using for the challenge and looked at the challenge in detail. We're into stage 2 where they've imagined the solutions they want to create. And really starting this week, they have to start the initiate and collaborate, where they really have to have a working full-scale solution as soon as possible. I would say no group is on that yet. So every group has some way to go in terms of like that initiate and collaborate. We're still just nailing down what they want to achieve. So that's kind of an overview of the tournament process, the what's up of Destination Imagination, and then I'll go into the more philosophical why. So if there's any questions, like I said, throw it in the chat. Students, I told you, give me some hard questions. Lay it on me. All right. I'll just briefly talk about the why, because I think it is important that we understand the bigger picture, and I do encourage this with my students as well, that they understand why we do this and we put you through this pain, because it is pain. It's hard. These challenges are hard. I won't tell you, it would be interference to tell you the exact solution, but I talked through one of your challenges with Mr. Gross this week and his suggestion of how he would do it. I was like, I never thought of that. And so it was interesting to have that sort of take on it and to realize how hard it is to think of some of these solutions. And that's why it's really great that you have these teams to work on it with. Okay, so Destination Imagination, like I already said, is 150,000 participants annually. Even in the Lower Mainland Regional Tournament, we've had teams come from Alberta to compete because they didn't have their own tournament. I think, and Brian can confirm, I think we even had a team at the provincials from China come? I can't remember. He would know. But it does reach over 2 million people. And like I said, it's K to 12. It has 38,000 volunteers. It has those challenges. It has those 5 levels that are going on. And you can see it's 30 plus countries. And they distribute a lot of scholarship money as well. So our grade 12s, because they participated in DI at one point, even if they didn't do it in their grade 12 year, we always leave it as an option for students to form a team in grade 11 and 12, but it would meet outside of school, which we're happy to facilitate, but because in PLP 11 and 12, there is no maker class, we haven't like embedded it in the curriculum, but it's always an option as well. So the grade 11 and 12s are encouraged to apply for that Destination Imagination scholarship as it comes up. And we have had PLP students win it in the past, so that's pretty exciting. In BC, Destination Imagination is supported by the gaming grant. So there's no fee to participate, even though it's a nonprofit. There are fees attached to getting the materials. But in British Columbia, any educational institution can apply for and receive the information to do the challenges. There's small fees attached to actually entering the tournaments themselves, which we have had in the past covered by our parent advisory committee and the school. So we're excited in that regard. For the teams themselves and their budgeting, they need to provide that money. So that's why I'm suggesting as much as possible to reduce and reuse so they're not spending over the budget or even near the top of the budget, because there's no need to. I should just mention in some school districts and counties in the United States, Destination Imagination is an entire part of the curriculum. So for example, every grade 7 competes in Destination Imagination or something like that. So even though it's kind of unusual in the public system in British Columbia, worldwide it's very well known. And the why for Destination Imagination comes down to that idea of like the workforce, right? This was what attracted us to Destination Imagination in the first place. Some of the concepts that Brian and I always thought about when we started the performance learning program is about the skills we wanted students to gain that are beyond just the regular everyday things things students learn in school. The problem solving, the critical thinking, the project management. And you can see some quotes there from some of the companies that actually do support destination imagination. IBM, AT&T, the US Department of Labor have all provided money and or guest speakers and things like that to destination imagination in the past. And it really is about that creative, critical thought that students need to be problem solvers going into the future. And they did some research in the last couple of years where in 2011, the researchers from a University of Virginia actually did an independent evaluation of destination imagination. And they found that categorically the students who participated in destination imagination became better at creative and critical thinking, collaboration, and idea generation. And we definitely have seen that with all our students. I'll give you some quotes from them in a moment. And the reason that is because, like I said, like the launch journal, it goes through these phases. They use their own version of this. They call it imagine, recognize, collaborate, initiate, assess, and then evaluate and celebrate. And their vision is that it is supposed to be fun. It's exploring STEM or STEAM concepts in a hands-on environment that students have fun with. It's creative problem solving. It is 100% kid powered, right? It is learner centered. They have to imagine the solution. And it is friendly competition. They do like winning. Our students like to win. And the trophies are evidence of that. They get a certificate of participation as well, and they get called up and recognized for that. So it is exciting. And our students go through a lot to get there. These are all quotes from some of our students, the things they learned in destination imagination, the ways they feel about destination imagination. And they do see it as stressful. It is a stressful time, and I wanted to host this webinar to put that out there. The students are stressed. It's a public performance of something they 100% own, create, and do. And I recognize that it takes months of work. It's dependent upon other people. It's not just them. They have to collaborate to do it. And it is stressful. But they come out the other side and they do tell us over and over and over again how much they realize it was a big success, how much fun they had, how proud they are of the work they did. And how much they learned about time management and group work and goal setting and all those things and more. So that really is our why we started Destination Imagination in PLP, why we continue Destination Imagination in PLP even when as a team manager you're pulling your hair out, and why we think it is still worth it in the end. So I am going to take questions in just one moment, but I do have one ask for our parent community and our families out there. We have a few things we're in need of to finish this tournament season to get to the other side. First of all, every team has to provide one adult volunteer for the day of February 29th, the regional tournament, which takes place at Seacove. So of those 5 or 6 students that are on a PLP team, we need one adult who can be here for the day. I don't want to start parsing it out. I mean, I suppose if you can't be there the whole day, we could have one team member adult for the morning, one for the afternoon, as long as we have one person. Ideally it's one person for the entire day to help out with the tournament. The jobs you might do could be anything from like helping with parking or running scores around, or helping with the appraising. It is a nonprofit. We rely 100%, and Destination Imagination relies a huge amount on the volunteers. The good news about volunteering is you do get lunch, and you probably get a t-shirt to wear. So I hope that sells each team into getting one adult volunteer. That is for here. We will not need you to volunteer at the provincial tournament, but if you love your experience and you're really into it, of course we can add your name to the roster for the provincial tournament as well. But hopefully we can get at least one adult volunteer from each team. The other thing is we're looking for a couple of specific supplies that I'll hopefully get Brian to put out in the email that sound very strange and bizarre. We need a wooden board that is exactly that long, or approximately that long and wide and thick. We need a couple of pairs of PVC piping. All of those are for the engineering challenge where they have to build a barrier. So this would help us build a practice barrier in the classroom. And I did ask around, but I thought, oh, in the spirit of Destination Imagination, I would ask our community first to see if anyone had these things. So if you do have one of those things, please just email me and we'll organize a pickup and getting it. But I want to build that for the engineering teams to practice with. They tend to reuse the engineering structures a bit. So if we donate it this year, then hopefully we can reuse it in the years to come as well. In the past, we had the Zanker family volunteer and built us our structure tester, but that structure tester, they've totally changed the challenge this year. So we need a new tester for this. The other thing also for the engineering challenge is we are in need of playing cards. Much to my surprise, casinos no longer provide playing cards. I guess they either use them longer or recycle them, but you can't just take them anymore. So we're looking for some standard deck playing cards. They will be destroyed in the process because students will be ripping them up, duct taping them, building their bridges out of them. But if you happen to have spare decks of playing cards around and can bring those in and send them to school with your child, we would really appreciate that for the engineering teams to play with. And the last thing is, in general, in the maker room, as things get messier, Ms. Maxwell and I, Emily Maxwell and I have been working really hard on cleaning up this room a little, and we are in need of some storage containers. So if you happen to have any spare storage containers with lids that you are willing to donate to cleaning up our maker room, I would definitely appreciate it, because as the students start bringing in more stuff, you'll see this room starts to get out of control. So we were trying to get proactive about it this year. So those are my big asks, the adult volunteer and any of those supplies you may have. As the teams get into the challenges, they will probably, well, definitely be asking you for more things. Of course, remember that interference contract, but feel free to say, well, who have you asked? We have a rule we often use in the classroom. It's ask 3 before me, which is, you know, what else have you done to solve that problem before just coming to me and asking me to buy it? So you can definitely use the ask 3 before me rule. That is pretty much all my slides. So I just have a pause here. If there are any questions you may have about Destination Imagination, about the tournament, about why we do it, about volunteering, anything like that. I should mention, oh, I totally forgot to mention this actually. For the teams, each team has their own base camp project. So hopefully you've seen, attended one of our previous parent boot camp nights, or you've seen, or you're hooked up to your students' projects in base camp. Brian has created, every team has their own base camp project area. So unlike other things, which normally things get handed in through Shobi, the students are demonstrating their own ability to do project management, and they are doing that through Basecamp. So every team, the students are on different teams, like I said, has their own Basecamp project that we see as well. So it's not completely on their own, but it's just for their team, where we have told them all communication, all documentation, everything needs to go through that Basecamp course. Oh, Brian's demonstrating it to you. So here is Hype Soup, one of the PLP 9 teams project area. And you can see they're adding in the docs and files the different pieces of their stage work. So they're in stage 2 Imagine, they've gone through stage 1 Recognize. We have the grade 9s form their own teams this year and make their own team contracts. So they actually have it up in the Maker classroom about the things they want to achieve as a team, because they've been through Destination Imagination once. Grade 8s, you can look forward to doing that next year. In Hype Soup's docs and files, you can also see even made their own logo and plan for their name. And I also have them do reflections after every instant challenge. So when they've done their Pet Tricks instant challenge, they have to reflect on how did they do? What would they improve on? And as well, when we said their communication has to go through here, we've encouraged them to use the campfire for sort of off-topic, one-off things. And you can see Asha, and you can see even my comments, I'm concerned, I see no stage 2 work. How is that going? And then it sat there with crickets until a couple of other students chimed in. So the campfire is sort of for those one-offs. They also have messages and message board where they have sort of threads where they can reply to things that are sort of longer conversations. So on January 30th, I posted, hey, what's your photograph going to be? And a couple of students did chime in and respond to that. But mostly I want them to manage it for them. So for example, they should have on their schedule the important dates like the tournaments already, but they haven't got there yet. But they have got some to-dos on here. So they have assigned to-dos, and like I said, Basecamp is a really powerful project management tool that they need to learn how to use. And so, for example, they've created a whole area in their to-dos called Milestone 1, and they've already completed some things, right? And I can see who's completed it and when they completed it and who they notified about how they completed it. The last thing Brian, I think, was going to click on, but he probably shouldn't because it might show everything about that student. But the nice thing as a teacher is this also keeps a record of who's being involved and how they've been involved. So, for example, if he clicks on Angelo, I can see everything Angelo's done, his activity on all the work. So Angelo's being pretty on it. Now that was during class today. So I would expect that he checked some things off. He added this file yesterday. If Brian scrolls, we can see other past things he's been doing. He answered a couple of questions on Sunday for his reflection. He chatted in the campfire. So as far as the groups go so far, Angelo's doing a pretty good job. He's engaged with his group. He's getting involved, and I can see that work. So this sort of makes a clarity to the process of working on the Destination Imagination project. I have 100% told all the students they should not have private group chats for Destination Imagination. In fact, the grade 9s have been told very specifically to ban their group chats, and all the chatting, all the planning needs to go through here, because this is how you handle a project management. This is how you organize yourself in the real world, and I want them to get used to doing that. We also have set up automatic check-ins, so every week they have to reflect on what happened this week that has gone well, what can they do to change and make it better. So that's kind of like an automatic check-in that comes in every Friday at 4:30. So it should keep them on task and organized throughout the project work. We also have up in the classroom a daily countdown. So we're down to 25 days until the tournament now. So I did warn the grade 9s today that in that last week before the tournament, I am expecting completed solutions, completed stories, that they are just doing dress rehearsals in that last week. So that really means their solutions have to be done about a week before that, which is really only like a week and a half from now. So that scared them enough, I think, that I probably will see some of them in here on the Pro D Day or next week for parent-teacher interviews for sure, so, because that face-to-face is invaluable to help build them. So that's pretty much everything I have to say. So any questions? Yes, the parent volunteer role could be split. You'll see when the schedule comes out, there is a lunch break in the middle of the day, and I think that's when the switch would normally take place. And I should say, even if you are the parent volunteer, there's absolutely no reason you won't be able to let your room know if you're volunteering in a specific room that your kid is presenting at such and such time and you'll need to leave to go watch them. So of course we encourage that as well, even if you are the parent volunteer that day. So as we sort of like work things out, each team has been told to ask their parents for who can volunteer, and then to come to me with the name. So if we need to split it at that time, that's when we'll do it. I think it's not so onerous as you might think. I know it's time, but the actual jobs themselves are actually kind of fun. It is fun to watch the students. You get to see, especially the little ones, like the primary solutions are really fun to watch because they're doing the same challenge your kids are doing. So seeing how they come up with a solution and they have to do it without interference as well is really interesting. So yeah, we really encourage everyone to come out, support teams, and I don't see any more questions or hands. Brian, last words?
No, I don't think so, other than we always invite your comments and questions. And actually, maybe Petra, do you just want to speak a little bit to like the stress that DI causes and what to maybe look out for, and what we think maybe is normal, and when things are not normal, how they can checking in with us?
Sure. So, like I said, it is normal for your students to feel more and more stressed as we get closer to the tournament because they've been working on the solution for months. They will feel frustrated. It does demand things. What would be I would be very surprised if at some point you don't see tears. I usually say that, and people think, oh, you're just a horrible person. But that frustration comes out really clearly with the students as we get closer to. And a lot of times there is a breakdown at some point. That is perfectly normal. Where it becomes abnormal is like anything that would cause lack of sleep, constant crying, thoughts that they're a failure, or that they just don't want to go to school. That level of frustration is not normal. So if you're seeing that, please let us know, and we can help intervene. Other abnormal things would be any strong issues within teams. It's of course normal that there's conflict. Some of the best collaboration comes out of conflict, right, Brian? Uh, so yes, there's some like verbal sparring that is going to happen where teams can't agree and they have to, come to an agreement, and maybe not everyone's happy with it and it gets frustrating. That is normal. That's why built into the project process, the teaching I do in class is not just here's 80 minutes, go work on it. We do things like they have to define their roles and responsibilities. They have to decide for each deliverable, who makes the decision here? Is this a decision by consensus? Is this one person? Who is that one person? Where do we go back to, So all those things are actually built into the planning process. So if the students follow them, and I encourage you to ask them to open their base camp, both their personal team project and the one I created with all the team resources in it, to show you, oh yeah, they're doing project management, these skills are built in. But if it gets to the point where you're hearing things where the team is, I don't want to say cruel. I hope none of our kids are cruel, but if they're insensitive to each other, or you feel that there's a situation where the team cannot resolve it, and I don't always know everything that's happened, especially if like they meet at your house on the weekend or something like that. So please loop me in any conversations that you feel are outside the bounds of respectful, healthy team development conversations. And I also said that about the money. If you start hearing like, oh, we're going to need to order, $100 worth of something on from Indigo or Amazon, or go to Michael's and spend hundreds of dollars. Yeah. Remind them about their budget and ask them, how does this fit in and what can we do to mitigate that? Again, without the interference piece. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Brian? Anything I missed?
No, I think that's great.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Brian will send out the recording. We'll also send out the reminders of the help wanted ads and stuff wanted ads to ask for your support. But I really appreciate everyone coming out and participating. And I hope everyone has a great night and enjoys their chips.